Hello, UK Crime Book Club. We are here tonight, Thursday night, with our Bloody Scotland winners panel. So I am going to ask you all to introduce yourselves rather than me do it for you, and then we'll get stuck in with talking about the books and ask a few questions. So, David, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. My name's David Goodman. I am the author of Move My Hand Over, Reluctant Spy, which came out September last year. The paperback came out in June, and it won the Harrogate McDermott Debut Award in July and the Bloody Scotland Debut Prize in September. So it's been a good year.
Very good year. Tariq?
Hello, everybody. I'm Tariq Ashkanani, and the author of The Midnight King, which is there. And yes, came out in April this year, and it won the Baccavani Prize this year in September at the Bloody Scotland Festival as well.
Brilliant. Marco?
Yep. Hi, I'm Mark Rinaldi. I am the imposter here because I don't have a book to show. I won Bloody Scotland's Pitch Perfect competition this year, so that's where I was pitching a book. So my book, Dark Waters, won that competition.
And congratulations to you all.
Thank you.
Got to be it's an exciting thing when it's such a specific prize as well. You know, not everybody can enter all of the prizes. So it's really nice to kind of see the different people that come through every year. It's a really good way, obviously, of discovering new talent. So congratulations, all three of you. So what let's go to you first, Marco. So tell us a little bit about what happened at Pitch Perfect. I have read your pitch on your website.
Excellent.
If anyone hasn't read it, go to Marcus Rinaldi's website, and we'll drop a link in as well into the group. So absolutely brilliant. I haven't read the others, but I can see why you won.
Oh, thank you very much. So for those that don't know, Pitch Perfect, you put in 100 words for a pitch, and then they pick the base ones to then pitch live at the festival on the Sunday morning. And I actually was a reserve until Saturday morning, when I was then told that I would be pitching on the Sunday morning.
Wow.
So that resulted in a number of panicked hours on the Saturday afternoon writing the pitch, and then turned up Sunday morning and ended up winning it. So I'm probably not not best liked by the other contestants because they were like, "Who is this guy?" And now you suddenly won it. So yeah.
I'm just trying to get Tariq back in, so I'll let him line his camera up and drop him in because I'm not sure what I've got a view of at the moment. So David, a reluctant spy, and I wrote them all down so that I could see that I get the right prizes. So debut prize.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So tell us a little bit about it.
So A Reluctant Spy, about the book or about the prize, or both?
Both.
Both, yeah. So the book is about a young man called Jamie Tillich who volunteers for, is asked to join a program called the Legends Program that prepares fake identities for agents by asking people to live their lives and then hand over their identity to a secret agent at some point. And he agrees to do that. Then when he comes to be handed over to hand his life over to a secret agent, he shows up for the rendezvous and finds his handler dead in a toilet. It's not really a spoiler, it happens in the first few chapters. And then ends up on the mission himself when there's supposed to be a trained agent in place. So it's one of those books, I think, that whenever I pitch it to people, they go, "Oh, that's a really fascinating or interesting and kind of fairly unique idea for a story," and I can see all the different ways that might go wrong. And I think that sort of that hook has been a big help to it because it makes it easy to pitch, it makes it easy to talk about. And I think that is what got it onto various long lists and then read by various readers and then got it into the two shortlists that it ended up in. And that, is amazing. I I thought it was amazing to get nominated for one, and then when it was two, I was like, this is amazing. Like, I can say I'm a multi-award nominated author now. That's amazing. And then when I won the first one, I was like, well, obviously I'm not going to win two. That's just not going to happen. And then it did, and it was one of the most surreal nights of my life. And then 10 minutes later, Tariq won, and Tariq and Marco and I know each other quite well, so it was a pretty good weekend for us as a group of friends.
Tariq, so tell us a bit about winning the McIlvanney Prize for Scottish Crime Book of the Year, and
It was,
just a little bit about The Midnight King.
It was nuts, yeah, of course. So the Midnight King is a kind of dark crime novel about Nathan Cole, who comes back to his hometown of Nashville for his dad's funeral, and he's going through his dad's stuff in his dad's house, and he's going through the wardrobe, and he comes across a shoebox that's filled with the trinkets from dead children because his dad was a serial killer. And Nathan grew up knowing this, and a lot of the book is about him coming to terms with what his dad did and what it meant, growing up in a house where your dad was a serial killer, and you have young kids, and at the same time, one of the trinkets in the box is ribbons belonging to a young girl who went missing just a few days before his dad's death. So there's a chance she's out there and still alive. So he tries to go and track her down. And at the same time, his childhood friend Isaac is a private investigator who's been hired by the missing girl's family to find her as well. And so those two men kind of inch closer and closer together, and they kind of circle around each other as they zone in on this missing girl, and a lot of family secrets, etc., come to the forefront. Winning the award was completely insane. It was a wonderful long list to be on. The long list was great, and I think I've said before that I think the long list had a really nice kind of examples of, I guess, the future of Scottish crime. There was it showed that it's strong and it's doing well, and there was new voices in there, like people like myself who've just getting started, and then there was established authors like Liam McIlvanney, Denise Mina, Ian Rankin, and I guess it's nice to see that people can write 20 odd books and still find ways to make them exciting and to bring new readers into it and stuff. So it was a really nice mix of old and new, I thought, on the long list, and then getting down to the short list and getting onto the winner was just insane.
Absolutely brilliant. So you've already done one interview this week together. Do you manage?
We only interview now as a trio.
Yeah.
Do you? I assume you've all known each other for quite a while. So just tell us all how you all know each other. So whoever wants to jump in.
Well, Tariq and I go back a long way. Actually, yeah. I trained Tariq as a lawyer, so I apologise to the legal system of Scotland for the bad job that I did. But actually, even before that, I knew Tariq because he went to university with my sister. So, so we've been friends a long time, and we used to write screenplays together. Actually,
got a couple of excellent ones knocking around.
Yes, exactly.
One day they will see the light of day.
And then so that's how. And then Tariq and I started the Page One podcast as well, where we speak to authors and screenwriters and stuff like that. So we speak to each other online quite a lot, I think it's fair to say. And then Dave, we met through. I joined the writing group, the Edinburgh SFF writing group, which Dave is a big part of, and that's how I got to know Dave, and then Dave met Tariq through that. So yeah, that's how we know each other.
Yeah, there's quite a small, quite a close knit community of writers in Scotland in general, but in Edinburgh particularly. And obviously the Page One podcast has been a big part of that. And I think I first saw you guys at Chimera, which is a science fiction and fantasy festival in Edinburgh. And they were doing a recording. I think it was COVID. I think it was during the COVID. They did a panel. So they hosted a panel.
Oh, I think that's right. I watched,
and I was like, oh, I must look up these guys' podcast. And then Marco joined
the
server.
Superstars.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I'm going to cozy up to these guys. They're obviously headed for great success.
Headed for greatness.
1 out of 2 isn't bad. So, yeah.
And thank you, Dave, for the permission to use the photo that I've used that I forgot to tag that it was your photo and give permission. You've given permission, but I'm assuming you're not going to come after me for using it.
No,
So
it was actually Alessandra Rinaldi, who's another friend of ours, who took that photo, and she tagged us all in. So I suppose it's her photo. But yeah, no worries, don't worry about it.
So, what are you all doing at the moment? So, where are you with your current book? And Marco, we're going to ask where you're up to in the process at the moment with looking for an agent or a publisher, or where you're up to. So, who wants to go first? No one.
I'll go first. So I am working on copy edits right now for Solitary Agents, which is the sequel to A Reluctant Spy. There, I'll keep pointing at it. And that comes out June next year. So we're right in the middle of the production process for that, and considering things for a third book. And I've also got another project for a different publisher that isn't announced yet that I'm waiting for first edits on. So I'm writing lots of things in different genres for different people, and also trying to get book 2 of the Legend series out.
So, and that's up for pre-order at the moment.
It is, yeah, and we just did a cover reveal last week, so it's all over my website, all over the internet.
Who wants to go next?
I'll go next. So at the moment I am I'm finishing up some edits on a book that I've got coming out in May next year called The Hollow Boys, which is a kind of crime again, but I hope title was a tough one. This one I really struggled to. The Midnight King I had from the start. I kind of had that before I had anything, but this one I really didn't know what I was going to call it. But it's kind of a crime novel, but with kind of spec sci-fi-ish, like supernatural kind of elements to it. So about 2 boys that go missing, and then one boy 10 months later, one boy comes back but says he's the other boy, and there's a kind of small town investigation into what happened 10 months ago. And the mum of the boy that came back thinks that that's not actually her son that's come back. She's brought there's like a demon involved, and there's all a bunch of kind of spooky stuff happening in the town. And is it a demon, or is it just a wily coyote that's ripping apart people on the outskirts? So it's kind of like, I kind of want to go for the X-Files-y kind of vibe a little bit. So copy edits and that, well, just edits and that what I'm doing just now. And then started 1st of December, I've got a book coming up with Thomas and Mercer called The Night Watcher, which is the first of an Edinburgh set crime series, which I'm looking forward to seeing how that one lands. Kind of PI investigating, female PI investigating a serial killer, of course, who's stalking the streets of Edinburgh. So it should be quite a fun one, I think.
Nice.
So, Marco, where are you up to with Dark Waters?
Yeah, I realise actually I didn't say what Dark Waters was about, so I will explain that.
Do that now, yeah.
So it's a historical horror thriller. I think I suppose I would describe it as, set in 19th century Venice when there was a.
Bad timing.
Well, all taking turns. All taking turns.
I know I had camera problems earlier as well. I'm not sure what happened.
Absolutely no idea, but we will bring Marco back in when his camera pops up. Got a little control panel at the bottom, so we'll
play for time. I can do some juggling or something.
You want to do some juggling? Have either of you actually got any special skills? I've got none.
I can actually juggle, and I have some juggling balls here.
Oh, I think that's. Come on then, Dave. Let's see it.
2 seconds.
Marco.
All right,
David's about to juggle.
Oh well,
we're stalling for time. We're waiting to come back. Dave's going to juggle.
Yeah. No, I was saying, it's set in
nice.
19th century Venice, and a detective basically who's lost his daughter. He's a bit of a broken figure. Investigates the murder of a child that calls back to his own child's killing, and he finds a symbol at the scene that he's had haunting him in his dreams since then, and so, it takes him to an asylum on the edge of the Venetian lagoon, and he learns he sees an eerie vision of his daughter with a warning that something is awakening in the depths of the lagoon. So that's what Dark Waters is about, and it is. I'm nearly done. I've got about 10,000 words to finish. Finish the draft anyway, and yeah. So I hope to do that in the next few weeks, and then obviously need to get it polished and everything, and then get it sent out to agents and stuff like that. So if there's any agents watching that like the sound of the pitch or look it up on my website, then please get in touch.
Well, I was talking to Fiona Brownlee over email this week, the fabulous Fiona, and she said our job tonight is to find you a publisher. That's our mission.
Oh, excellent.
So
okay. I like that.
Excellent.
Nice.
We'll put that out there to anyone who might be watching, who knows anyone who is looking or is looking themselves. So all of you, I mean, none of you go for anything light and fluffy, shall we say.
No.
You all really go hard with these themes with, things that some authors will not touch, like, be careful how I word that, subjects like things happening to children. And a lot of people won't touch that. None of you kind of shy away from anything. So how much kind of thought goes into what the right level of dark is for your story, for your audience? How do you kind of go about planning that? So David, let's start with you. I know.
So I'm possibly the odd one out of the two because I don't tend to write darker stuff. I do. So in some of my science fiction, I have some fairly dark stuff. The novel that we sold is set on a generation ship, and it has it asks questions about what would happen on a ship that size over that strength of that length of time. But I think most of the darker moments in A Reluctant Spy are personal and individual ones. They're things like Jamie being interrogated, and trying to work and discovering bodies. So there are I suppose there's a fair amount of blood and death and things in the book, but I'm certainly not. I mean, the standing joke with Tariq is that he's written the darkest book possible, and Marco's is. I've read the first 3 chapters and it's pretty dark as well.
I think there's it's a good question. I don't think there's ever anything, to be honest, I think there's nothing off limits or should be off limits when it comes to fiction or telling a story. I think it's all comes down to how you tell that story and how you approach it, and if it's written in a way that's kind of sensationalist or voyeuristic or whatever, then that maybe we have problems. But I think nothing should ever be off the table in terms of what you want to talk about or what you want to write about. And I think for me, I knew I do love dark stuff and I love horror movies, and I'm probably kind of sick in the head. And I think when it comes to what I wanted to write, I knew I wanted to write a dark crime story, and I think horror and crime are kind of two sides of the same coin almost. I think you can, we've chatted before about how crime is a really malleable topic that can be any kind of, you can have a cozy crime, sci-fi, comedy, dark horror type of crime. It lends itself to all these types of genres really well, and I think horror, for some reason in my head, goes really well with crime in a way that a lot of other genres maybe don't. Like it fits really nicely. You can tell a really nice dark story that verges on a horror movie almost. And so I knew I wanted to write a book that was kind of maybe unsettling or verging on kind of scary or whatever. And I guess I kind of asked myself, what would I find scary? What would I find unsettling or uncomfortable to write about? And I think if I was uncomfortable to write about it, if it felt I was a bit kind of on edge, then that's good because that might come through in the reading of it, and I hope that translates to people who are reading the book. So, and I just had kids recently, in the last few years, so that was an obvious one for me. Was something happened to kids is an obvious thing that I would find quite distressing. So that seemed like an obvious thing for my characters to then have to deal with, that same kind of fear, I guess. And that was, and there's definitely points when you write stuff and you're like, this is, I mean, maybe taking it too far, but I think for me, the way I've dealt with it is to take it as far as you can and to write it to a point when you probably are taking it too far, and to then in redrafts you can dial it back. And I think you need to work out where the line is and have it crossed over into something that's kind of voyeuristic, or it's not actually, I'm losing the reader. It is too much. The topic and the subject matter can stay the same, but how I'm approaching it has to be dialed back a little bit. And also you've got people who read it for you. You've got editors, you've got agents, etc. You've got all other people who chip in and say, "What the hell is this? This is disgusting. This needs to come out." And so you say that's fine. You can bring it back. So yeah, it always works out well. Well, yeah. That was self-pubbed. It'd be cancelled by now, I
think. Excuse me.
I mean, yeah, I would agree with a lot of that. You know, especially in terms of like what would scare me the most is something to do with my children and stuff. So that is probably where that comes from. But you know, it's also I find it useful for exploring the character as well. You know, you know, poor Luca in my book. You know, you knock him down as far as you can to try and break him essentially, and then find how he copes with that or doesn't cope with it, as the case may be. You know, I never want to put. I would never put anything in that is just purely gratuitous. I want stuff in there that is serving the story, that is you know, building the story up and the character, and you're seeing why characters are doing what they're doing essentially.
So, what are the things that the characters that you really like to sit down and write? Is there kind of a certain vibe with different ones that you, or are you looking to write likable, unlikable? You know, how is it all fitting together for you?
I mean, I like to write. I quite like a broken, flawed protagonist. That's what I like. You know, because if they're like that, then you know they're not the sort of, you know, chiseled hero of you know, old stories or whatever. There's a problem with them. Tariq's going again now, but. So it's just interesting as a writer to explore that, to see where you can push it, to see how other characters will then react to them and all of that sort of stuff. It gives a good jumping off point to me if my main character has some flaws to them, as opposed to being, you know, some sort of, you know, spectacular detective or whatever.
Yeah, I think I'm always at pains to say that I am not my main character, Jamie, even though Jamie is a slightly anxious Scotsman from West Edinburgh who moves to London, ends up in a career that he's not very well suited for, and feels out of place a lot, which is certainly how I would have described myself a decade ago. So I think it's to a degree you're always writing yourself a bit, or you're putting elements of your own character into your characters, but also I think when readers do sometimes assume that you're essentially just writing autobiography with the serial numbers filed off. It's not true. You know, I have a perfectly good relationship with my family, for example. Jamie in the book very much doesn't, and you know, I've been fascinated by the secret world for my whole life, whereas Jamie is kind of stumbles into it. So I try to write characters, I think, who reflect what I think is interesting about human characters and the way that people deal with situations. But I also have, you know, I've other characters who are completely different. Like there's Sally Lime, who's the techie in the book, and she's a lot of fun to write because she's very sarcastic. And then there's Nicola Ellis, who is a completely different character, who's a sort of very experienced field handler and is very mission focused. And they're all aspects. You know, I'm putting myself in their shoes when I'm writing them, but I'm not them and they're not me. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, sorry, go on.
No. I was going to say, I think when it comes to characters, I think likable, unlikable. I think both. I think you want a mix of both, and I think your main character doesn't have to be likable. For people to follow them, you know, you don't have to root for someone to be interested in where their story's going to go. You know, I think like Breaking Bad, I think is a classic example of a character that becomes more and more unlikable as the show goes on, but you're still invested in his journey and you still want to, he's still compelling. And so I think you can, it's obviously trickier, I think, but I think you can have a character that is unlikable but not off-putting to the reader. And as Marco says, flawed, broken people, that's always more interesting, I think, isn't it? No one's perfect and no one's got their head screwed on completely and nails everything every first time that's a boring character. So that you want someone who's got some flaws, is rounded and makes mistakes and learns from them and stuff, or doesn't learn from them. But as long as they're compelling, I think that's the key thing really when it comes to a good main character.
I've lost count of the number of reviews I've had where people have said I was shouting at the book because Jamie was doing something stupid, brave but stupid, and
that's great.
If you made him like super competent, it wouldn't be half as tense because you would know that he'd probably be okay. But when he's
totally
stumbling into a room and bugging a Russian mercenary and doing all sorts of stupid things that he's not really trained for, that kind of tension is what makes people turn the page. Absolutely.
Just thinking about the different main characters you've all got, the different kind of detectives in a way, and how each of you were drawn to the different ones. So we find a lot of people come into crime and they either kind of go, not everybody obviously, but there's a lot of people who come in because they've read a police procedural, absolutely loved it, and they feel like, they can relate to it in a way, not realising that a lot of the stuff that they think they know, because we've all done it, we've watched something on the TV, thought that's how it is, read it in a book, not kind of batted an eyelid, and then years later you find out actually that's not how it's done. But you've all picked something that's going to take different areas of expertise as well. So not all the easiest of things to find actual evidence of to use as a kind of real life case.
Well, I mean, I am part of the reason for me making Isaac, he's the main investigator character in the Midnight King, and I made him a private investigator rather than a cop, to kind of try and sidestep some of the research into what the kind of how a US police station would work in Nashville, and what the procedure would be, and how the ranks would be, and who their higher up person they would check in with, and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, well, if I make him a private investigator, no, I keep saying personal investigator, private investigator, that kind of that's a completely different. That sidesteps that nicely and gives me free rein to kind of make things up a little bit. And I think also, I mean, I totally agree that I watch stuff like True Detective, and I'm like, cool, that's how things work in the US and in cops. And I have no idea if that's true or not, but I kind of think it doesn't matter. Like as long as it feels authentic and that's good enough, I think, to be honest. And I always think if it's good enough for an HBO TV show, then it's probably good enough for me. And I know there'll be people out there who are screaming here saying that is not how it works. That drives me mad. And I get that, and I can apologise, but I'd rather bend.
You'd rather bend the rules. Just while we see if Tariq comes back, there's a scene that I interviewed an author called Jack Probin about one of his books, and I forget which, might have been Deadly Justice. And there's a scene where somebody is dangling from a bridge and then vaporized by a train.
Oof.
So, and I said to Jack, "Is that really?" Said, "No idea, probably not." But it read well, didn't it? Yeah, it's a good scene. I was like, "Yeah." So sorry, Tariq, you cut off just at the end.
No, I was made my point basically, but yeah, exactly that. I think as long as it sounds cool and it feels like it could happen, and it's like it kind of has that ring of authenticity to it, that's good enough. That's good. I'm happy with that.
It worked in the scene for me, definitely. So I think there's some things that would. I know Kate Bendelow, author, CSI, former CSI, hates it when people pick things up at crime scenes with the pen.
Right.
So things like that, I think people are kind of will get more annoyed about than.
See, I would have thought that was
totally
fine. I would have thought that'd be quite a sensible thing to do from my layman's perspective. But that's interesting.
Yeah, I think one of the things I get a lot is, how do you know about this stuff? Are you a spy? And I'm like, no, I'm not a spy. And
which is the answer you would, of course, give, Dave.
Well, of course, but I've told this anecdote several times, both on both sides. I literally signed a clause in my contract that said this does not need to be checked by the MOD or any security services. And I asked a couple of friends of mine, I was like, is this clause in your contract? And they were like, no, they must only put that in for the spies or suspected spies. So I've legally ticked a box that says I'm not a spy. But the weird thing that happened after the book came out was the CIA. Are you guys like kicking the cables out?
I know, what are you
I don't know what is going on, but
the CIA's in-house magazine reviewed the book, and slightly tongue-in-cheek, they were like, "This is a very elegant solution to a real problem that we have as an intelligence agency, which is kind of creating digital identities for our agents that will stand up to scrutiny. It's a real problem." And then they were like, maybe this is the solution. Probably not, though, because it's fraught with all sorts of problems. But the core idea I just made up. Doesn't, as far as I know, it doesn't exist. I think it would be a really bad idea. Please don't do it, MI6. But the tradecraft, some of it comes from books and films. Some of it's lifted from McHerron, some from Le Carre, some from Len Dayton, some from I.S. Berry and David McCloskey more recently. But some of it is just research. It's reading non-fiction books about spying. It's reading, kind of watching documentaries. Just people are absolutely fascinated by spies and how they do what they do. And most of what we know in the public domain is 10, 15, 20 years out of date. And what they're probably doing now is lots of drones, lots of spreadsheets, lots of tech, which is, I think, less interesting to read about. In some cases, it depends. So some of it I make up, some of it I draw from documentaries and so on, and some of it is just is kind of common sense. All the terminology is mostly made up. There's the odd bit that comes from something else, like
Mick Herron. Oh, sorry.
Oh, you.
Oh, I was going to say Mick Herron made up a whole bunch of stuff, right? Like his, his whole stuff's completely made up.
The dogs
and Le Carre,
the dogs,
the funny thing with Le Carre is
Circus.
A lot of the things that he made up about, like he used to call people who followed other people pavement artists, and apparently that became adopted within
that's cool.
Within MI6. They started using that phrase, and and there's all these different lamplighters are people that plant bugs in the Le Carre books, and they ended up adopting that terminology. So I think the secret goal of any spy novelist is to get one of your terms, into the lexicon of real life intelligence services.
So you just made me think of something just while we wait for Marco to come back. He's coming back now. The writers of Porridge wanted to get a word in there, and they got nerk. They made up nerk. So, you cunning nerk, or all these different things. Brilliant. And because they wanted something you could get away with saying on the BBC.
Yeah. Was it what was the Battlestar Galactica remake did? Frack. Yeah. So they could use it as a swear word, but on the on like 8:00 at night in NBC. Yeah.
So Marco, you have got Detective Luca. You've not just kind of given yourself all of the expertise for Luca. You're in Venice in 1849. You've got different people from different places coming in. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's an awful lot to kind of.
Yeah, I made my life very, very difficult with that. Because not only is it Venice in the 19th century, it's Venice in the 1 year when they had fought off the Austrians. So it was called the Republic of San Marco at that point. So even that was different because they had, the Austrian police were in place before this happened. So I have tried to research and sort of find out but there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of information, at least not that I've found, about exactly how the police force was made up and stuff like that. So I've just given, like Tariq was saying, you just have to make it feel authentic, really, and feel like the time. And with historical stuff as well, some people get very hung up on precise dates of things and stuff like that. Now, my story, other than the siege sort of happening in the background, there's no specific dates that matter that much. So I've got a bit of leeway as a result of that. But I do try and do research. I've researched the period. I've read a whole book on the siege of Venice and stuff. So I feel I've picked up all of that I can flavor the book with and make everything feel like that time. And then from then, it's just a case of, I quite like my characters it's set in 1849, but they speak in a fairly, modern parlance at time. And I quite like that. I personally, when I read a book, I quite like that sort of thing. It sort of is easier to connect with over the years if there's some familiarity like that. So Yeah, I just want it ultimately to feel like it could be happening at that time. If a historian writes in and says, actually, this isn't how the police would have done this in Venice in 1849, then I apologise. But hopefully it works. Hopefully it works.
If there wasn't a lot out there, then maybe the leeway is a good thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Not too many things that people can unpick.
That was actually something with this book. So it's technically science fiction because it's set 3 years ahead of when I wrote it. I wrote it in 2023, and it's set in 2026 after the collapse of the Russian Federation following the Ukraine war. So the whole context is a geopolitical world which doesn't exist, and that was actually very freeing because it meant I could make up my own geopolitical balance and then upset it rather than having to. Although there is a character in it based loosely on Yevgeny Prigozhin, who obviously marched on Moscow when I was 3/4 of the way through the draft, and I was like, oh no, I'm going to have to rewrite this whole. But same thing happened to David McCloskey. He was writing a scene with a very similar character, all based around Putin, and he was like, I'm going to have to redraft the end of this book. And then he got shot out of the sky in his plane, and I think both of us were like, oh well. Bad luck, but means we don't have to rewrite the last third of our books. Grim.
See, I feel like I should ask Tariq and Marco that. Have you had to change anything because of something that's happened while you were writing? I mean, Marco, does that even apply to you? Really? Actually, no. Probably not.
I don't think it would apply to me. That's the one advantage of saying you do your research and it's there, and it's not going to change at that point. So yeah, I'm fortunate in that regard.
No, I can't think of anything that happened as I was writing it. Luckily, I think I'm trying to think of anything at all that might have happened. Serial killers, the serial killer in The Midnight King is it's kind of someone who used to get like, oh, Dave's turn now.
I can't believe it. Yeah,
get back in the 70s and 80s. He had you don't really get folk like that anymore. I don't think so. It's kind of that kind of when they get a moniker from the media and Music City Monster, and everyone's kind of freaking out about him and stuff. So luckily there wasn't anything similar going on at the same time that could have changed stuff at all. I don't think for me it was quite good.
Hello. We're just saying it's your turn. Your turn.
Yeah, I was hoping I would escape cursed, but never mind.
So one thing I wanted to ask you all, I was going to ask, and I'll ask both sides of it actually, advice for people when they are thinking ahead to enter in a competition of any kind. Any advice you've got on that? But also how you three do you all talk through different ideas with each other? Do you have to talk each other back from some things, or say, actually, Tariq, you can go that far with that scene. It's absolutely fine.
I've actually told Tariq to take stuff out of his picture.
Margo's a wimp.
On the competition front, I mean, I just think, these certainly from my point of view, something like Pitch Perfect, it's so difficult nowadays to find an agent through the slush pile that anything you can do to get yourself in front of an agent, and this one is a pitching competition. You might have an agent 1-to-1. There might be a competition where you enter the opening of your book or whatever. I think these sorts of things are so invaluable for giving you another potential route of finding an agent or a publisher. And there really is, especially this bloody Scotland Pitch Perfect competition, you just need 100 words ultimately. Craft that 100-word pitch, and then you might end up being able to pitch your story. You don't need to have finished the book even at this competition. So I think these types of things are growing to be more and more important, because I do think it is getting more and more difficult to find an agent through the old sort of send them 3 chapters and a synopsis, because they're just so busy these days. What was the other part of your question? Sorry, I've completely forgotten it.
Advice with each other. What kind of things do you discuss?
So I absolutely will, contact Tariq and Dave about, particular story issues and things like that. Sometimes I often find I can find myself stuck at a point in a story and it's almost just the process of talking, of actually speaking with someone about it. As I'm telling them about it, I can sort of, it falls into place what I need to do, but I need to have that conversation in the first place. So I find having a supportive circle of writer friends is invaluable for my writing, certainly.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of that. And I think when it comes to competitions, I think totally it's getting harder and harder to try and punch through the churn and the slush pile and to get noticed in any way. I think is always a good thing. And I think, you know, Marco's story of being on the reserve and then finding out the day before that he got through, and then, you know, it's people talk about luck and things happening, but you do need to kind of create your own luck. I think in a lot of ways, you need to put yourself out there in a way that it means if things fall a certain way, you're able to take advantage of that opportunity, and you're able to say, right, cool, a slot's open up tomorrow. I'm ready for it. I've got a pitch ready for it just in case this happened, and I will, you know, I'll work on it today, but it's largely there. And I think that giving yourself the best chance at anything like this is really important. So yeah, there's a great deal of luck involved in winning competitions and getting into competitions, but I think you can do yourself the best favor you can by preparing yourself and creating that situation where you're able to take advantage of any possible crack or any luck that happens. And yeah, in terms of give a chat, yeah, from my point of view, things like story stuff or things like, you know, what's going on behind the scenes with an agent or edits on a book and what editors said and what people's thoughts are, what I should do with it. You know, I think those kind of thoughts. A lot of writing is by yourself in a room for 90% of the time. You know, you're batting your own head, and you end up can't see the woods for the trees, and you don't know where you're going to take something, and you're so close to it. I think sometimes taking a step back and just talking to someone and saying, what do you think I should do here? Or and they bring in a new idea I thought about, or just being like, I've got two options. Who should I submit to? Who should I be looking at? How should I best go back to this person's email? That sort of stuff. It's so handy to have a sounding board, other folk to kind of chat about, and you're not just all on you in your own head and you're stressing yourself out about it.
Yeah, definitely. I think you've got to be in it to win it, and getting into as many things as you can and trying to prepare for them as well as you can. I think it just all helps. But I think in terms of supporting each other, like, and it's not just these three guys, like, you know, I know more than these two and they know more than me as well. But I think one of the great joys, and I've said this quite a few times, one of the great joys of getting to where I am now is I think it's very common for people to make a lot of friends in their youth, you know, at university or school or their first job. And then basically just over time lose friends until you've got one or two people that you still know. But it's quite hard to make new friends as you get older. And I think one of the great joys of joining these communities and meeting these people is, you know, I'm in my mid-40s now and I'm still meeting amazing, bookish, interesting people who are fascinated by stories and really smart and want to talk about these things. And that community, even because nothing else is guaranteed, like the money, the awards, although, you know, obviously us three have done all right, but none of that is guaranteed. But the writing itself and the people that you meet through the writing are both kind of an amazing reward in and of themselves, definitely.
And we often say about people who are part of the crime fiction world in any way are just the best people to be around. You're all really dark, yeah, funny. The dark humour in the books is the kind of, it's like the lifeblood of my household. We are not the most appropriate storytellers at tea time, but yeah, we have a lot of fun with it.
They will both literally and figuratively help you hide a body, because they'll know how to do it for a start, and then they'll be good enough friends that they'll probably do it as well. So, but
yeah, we make a lot of rosebush jokes still. So, Mum, why are the roses flowering so late?
I think it's a form of therapy almost, isn't it? It's like, you know, you kind of get all that kind of horrible neuroses and paranoid thoughts, etc. You get it all on the page, and then what you're left with is this wonderful, just zen, just chilled. But it's wonderful. I never felt better than when I've written a chapter about murdering someone in the most brutally horrible fashion. never sleep as well as after I've done that.
Sleeping like a baby.
Yeah,
So it's your version of like rage cleaning.
exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Scrubbing
Yeah.
everything. You're
Yeah,
getting
and
it
the folk
on
you
the
want to watch
page.
out for are the romance authors and the kids authors who keep all that horrible stuff inside. They purge all the nice stuff, and they're left with that horrible kernel of darkness, which is miserable.
People
Are you trying
always
to
say
start
that.
beef
I
with?
know, yeah.
This
Yeah,
is
I
like the
got
third or fourth
massive
time
beef
I've heard you say
romance.
It's
that.
all right. You should hear what they say about him, and now he's gone.
That's it. Mic drop. He's out.
We had a comment earlier from Leslie who she says she likes a nod to the language of the period, but she wants it to be easy to read or listen to rather than hard work. So, how are you balancing that, Marco?
Yeah,
Language.
like I, I don't know that I'm consciously doing that, but the characters, I think Dave and Tariq have read the start of it, but the characters do speak of the period. It's just that certain phrases or whatever will come through that are sort of ground them more. I think is how I would say. I know exactly what Leslie means. You don't want like modern characters in 19th century Venice, and that's not what it is. But I just think there's some bridging that can be done between now and then to make it easier, because I agree, I don't want to read a book where I'm having to pause every second word to try and work out what the person's trying to say. There's nothing that will stop the flow or enjoyment of reading a book more than that. So yeah, it's something that I try and do, but actually dialogue is probably one of my favorite bits to write. I find dialogue quite. I can get on a good flow with dialogue. I can imagine the conversation going back and forth or whatever, and I quite enjoy dialogue. It's the sort of where to drop in some descriptions and stuff like that that gives me more difficulty.
Do either of you, David or Tariq? Nope, just David.
Not just David.
Have any any thoughts on use of language and writing dialogue? Anything to add with that?
Yeah, I write a lot of technical dialogue for obvious reasons. There's lots of technical spy stuff going on. There's actual techie, literal. Like I had a long bit that my editor made me cut in half, which was explaining how redundant array of independent disks work, which is a backup system. And my editor was like, "We don't need this. We don't. You can get across that a bad thing has happened without in detail explaining why sector hard drives are striped and blah blah blah." So a lot of that I write the long techie nerdy version to get it out of my head, and then I'll cut it down.
Oh, okay.
And quite often as well, there's just military jargon. There's a lot of kind of special forces and things hovering around the edges of the book. And again, I'll do the full throated version and then cut it down again. So a lot of it just comes out in editing just to refine it, and that it goes through my critique partners, it goes through beta readers, it goes through my editor, copy editor, proofreader. So by the time it gets to the reader, it's been refined and refined and refined until it's really accessible.
So Tariq, we were talking about kind of language and how you use different things in your stories.
Yeah, I kind of would echo a lot what Marco said in terms of the dialogue. I really enjoy dialogue, and I love using it as a kind of means to drive the story forward and to get out what's happening. And I think for me, I guess I kind of like to see things visually in my head when I'm kind of working on a scene, and I suppose I approach it kind of like a screenplay in which I want to do the show don't tell. I want to show people having a conversation about something rather than telling the reader directly what's going on. I'd rather that what's happening or what they're talking about is naturally on the page through dialogue and action, rather than telling the reader what it is, which is you can do in a book, and that is a wonderful thing about a book, is you can just tell the reader something, which is great. But I'd like to find a way for my characters to say what something is, and that can be quite tricky because you don't want Yeah. Oh, my brother. I haven't seen you since last Monday when we had dinner at my mum's house. Yeah. You're trying to avoid that kind of horrible. It has to still ring true dialogue and stuff. So yeah. So that's a fun part when you get a nice flow, a page of like just back and forth dialogue, and and you can follow it nicely. And it's we're watching The West Wing at the moment, which was one of my favorite shows, and I know Sorkin dialogue is hideously unrealistic, but it is wonderful to. It's like poetry sometimes. You listen to people who can do it well, write it really well, say it really well. It's a wonderful back and forth, and I love that like rhythmical poetry almost to the like really nicely written speech.
One of the things that I ask from time to time is if you have acted out anything, acted out part of a scene, or something just to see how it would work. So we've had people who have, Kat Yaff had a husband, I believe, tape her to a chair. So don't know if you put the tape over her mouth or not. I'll have to ask Kat that. But
Yeah, that defence won't hold up in court.
Absolutely not.
It's for a book. It's for a book.
So lots of different things. My favourite one is Mark Richards and his son had a fight at the end of Whitby Pier. Always going to be one of my favourite stories. So anyone had a scuffle at the end
Tariq,
of a
have you
pier?
put a bag over a child's head?
Yeah, I had to time how long it takes to suffocate a child. Apart from that, no, I don't have I've never done anything. I think the most I've ever done is just read it out, just to make sure it sounds okay. When I always like reading things out loud to make sure that the pacing of it and the if it sounds nice when you read it, I think it sounds nice if it sounds nice when you hear it, I think it sounds nice when you read it. But no, in terms of actually acting out scenes from a book or no, I can't think of anything actually.
I feel the need to, because you've not acted it out, I now want to know, has anyone overheard you reading something out that has gone kind of...
No, I don't think so. I always do it. I make sure there's no one in the house when I'm doing that part.
I've definitely
Probably
done
a good plan.
So I've done both. As I'm sitting typing, if it's like a fight scene or a scene with a lot of characters in a confined space or something, I might be like doing that, sort of moving my hands around, thinking about how things go. And I'll also very frequently make the face that my character is making. So I'll be like making weird faces as I'm typing, because I'm trying to visualize. I'm like, how do you describe that face where you go? And or whatever it happens to be, and I do that a lot. I do a lot of sort of. I probably look absolutely insane when I'm looking, but I don't have a camera apart from this one, and it's got a little flip down thing. So you do. I don't know what I look like when I write, and I don't really want to.
There's some real potential for fun for window cleaners, I'm guessing, with you two.
Yeah, I'm on the second floor, so thankfully they can't be like peering.
No, I don't think I've ever acted anything out. I will. So, like my mum's family's from Venice, so if I'm in Venice, then I will try and I'll go and look at buildings or try and walk from one place to another, or to again get that authenticity going and see if something could work in the way that I was thinking it could work and things like that. So. Yeah, but that's about as far as I've gone. I've not done anything terrible that I'm aware of.
It's a very specific denial.
Yeah, exactly. I'll say no more.
Classic lawyer.
We're coming up towards the end now, and I wish I'd have asked this before we were on camera, Marco, but would you like to read your 100-word pitch at the end?
Yes, I'll do that. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I wouldn't normally put you on the spot, but I feel like you've just had a really good round with it. So
okay, yeah.
I don't think round was the word I was after. So while we give Marco a minute to get his 100 words in his head, would you two like to just give us a quick recap of The Midnight King and A Reluctant Spy? So Tariq.
So The Midnight King is a dark crime thriller about Nathan Cole, who returns home to his hometown of Nashville, where for his dad's funeral. His dad's died at the very start of the book, and he's in his father's house, and he goes through his father's things, and he finds a shoebox in the wardrobe filled with the trinkets from dead children, because his father was a serial killer, and Nathan grew up in this house knowing his dad was a serial killer, and in the trinkets at the very top is a pair of ribbons belonging to a little girl who went missing a few days before his dad's death and might still be alive out there. So he goes to try and track her down. And at the same time, his childhood friend Isaac is a private investigator hired by the family of the young girl to find her. And these two men kind of circle each other closer and closer to finding this girl, and the whole secrets and guilt and what's happened in their childhood. It all comes to the surface, and bad things happen to many people.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, so A Reluctant Spy is about a young man called Jamie Tulloch who when he's about 23, he's from a fairly rough background in Edinburgh. He doesn't have a huge amount of network or social support, but he manages to get himself to Cambridge on his own efforts. But when he's about to graduate, he's approached and they say, we'll give you a bit of a devil's bargain. We will give you the support. We will pay off your student loans, which I'm sure a lot of people might sign up for. In return, at some point in the future, you need to give us your identity, go off on holiday. Somebody else will use your identity to do something, and then we'll give it back to you. So you get a little holiday, and he's like, cool, sign me up for that deal. Sounds great. And then he ends up getting activated. He goes to meet his handler, and when he gets there, his handler is dead, and he ends up, through various machinations, on the mission himself instead of the trained agent that's supposed to be there. And then Nicola Ellis is the handler who ends up dealing with the terrified, foolhardy Scotsman who's found himself in a mercenaries compound in Zanzibar. And that's the rest of the book.
Thank you very much. Marco?
Okay, so this is slightly longer than 100 words. This is more the pitch that I gave, but I'll get through it quickly. A murdered child, a grieving father, a city under siege. Venice, 1849. The still nascent Republic of San Marco cowers nightly under attack from Austrian artillery, but for Detective Luca Marangon, the battle for the city pales in comparison to the daily battle to just keep going. Only months ago, his daughter died, and he's been drowning ever since. When he's called to the scene of an infant's gruesome murder, he discovers a connection to his own loss, a strange symbol carved at the scene, the same one that has haunted his dreams. Could it be his daughter's killer? Impossible. That man is already dead by his own hand. Ignoring calls to step aside, Luca throws himself into the case, his grief twisting into obsession. A bloody trail of bodies and whispers of foreign texts and things long forgotten lead him to an asylum on the edge of the Venetian lagoon, where he suspects something more than medical care is being provided. Instead of answers, he stumbles across a girl on the run and is soon confronted by an eerie vision of his daughter with a warning. Something horrifying is awakening in the depths of the lagoon. The murders are but one piece of a larger, terrible jigsaw. With this runaway at its centre, desperate for some form of absolution, he vows to keep her safe at all costs. But as his sanity fractures, that promise forces him to take lives of his own. Can he save this girl from his daughter's fate and stop the monstrosity rising from the dark waters of the lagoon before becoming a monster himself? There you go.
Oh, nice.
Well deserving win, and best of luck with finding your agent. I can't wait to get you back on here and talk through the full story. So thank you all so much. Congratulations again. We've had some hellos and thank yous, and congratulations from Victoria Dowd as well. So thank you all so much, and I hope you'll come back and talk to us again. And thank you to everyone who's watched and dropped comments in.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.